Will Senate please come to order? We'll observe a moment of silence in lieu of a devotional. Thank you. Are there any announcements? Seeing none. Senator from Chittenden.
If I might just have a second.
We'll take a brief recess. Will Senate please come to order? Pursuant to temporary Rule 44A, the following bill having failed to meet crossover and being released by the Committee on Rules is now referred as following. H 902 to Government Operations. H 956 to Government Operations. We are waiting for Senator Lyons, and she will be here briefly, we've been told, so we will take a brief recess.
He's trying to tell me.
Will Senate please come to order? Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Assuring the President that I voted with the prevailing side, I move that the Senate reconsider its vote on its concurrence in the House proposal of amendment on S-239. The reason that we need to take this vote is that there was an error in the House proposal amendment as it was sent to the Senate. This has now been corrected, and because we voted on the incorrect version of the House proposal amendment yesterday, we must reconsider our vote or else the bill would not be able to be sent to the governor's desk, as both bodies would not have agreed to the same language on the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
The senator from Chittenden Southeast has moved that the Senate reconsider its actions on the House proposal amendment to S-239. Are you ready for the question? Senator from Chittenden Central.
And just a clarification for senators, the idea is that this will go to the calendar so that we are fully transparent about what we're doing, and there will be a 24-hour period for people to review. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've agreed to reconsider the vote on the House proposal of amendment to S-239. In order to be properly noticed, the bill and the corrected House proposal of the bill will be placed on tomorrow's notice calendar. Orders of the day. We'll start with third readings. We have H-512. Are there any amendments prior to third reading? Senator from Windsor.
Thank you. There was a question from the senator from Chittenden North about, well, I'm not going to summarize it, but I will answer it in the following way. I understand there are concerns going forward from some advocates. And I would say that the venues are open to monitor that behavior, which is selling scam tickets outside of venues. This is something we're going to have to monitor. And that is why we meet every year. We can review things and see how they're working. And this also has a sunset in 2 years. So I think we're all eyes are going to be on how this works. And the venues certainly have a high degree of interest in making sure it's working. And so I think it will be monitored, and I think that we will be able to review how it's working both next year and when it sunsets in 2 years. Thank you.
Are there any amendments prior to third reading? Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H-512, an act relating to the regulation of the event ticket market.
The question is, shall the bill pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the bill is passed in concurrence with proposal of amendment. We now have H-536 for third reading. Are there any amendments to be offered prior to third reading? Seeing none, listen to the third reading of the bill.
H-536, an act relating to toxic heavy metals in baby food products.
Question is, shall the bill pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we have passed H-536 in concurrence with proposal of amendment. H-559, are there any amendments prior to third reading? Seeing none, listen to the third reading of the bill.
H-559, an act relating to the parole board.
Question is, shall the bill pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we've passed H-559 in concurrence with proposal of amendment. We now have H-674. Are there any amendments prior to third reading? Seeing none, listen to the third reading.
H-674, an act relating to the creation of the Vermont Sister State Program.
The question is, shall the bill pass in concurrence? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we've passed H-674 in concurrence. We now have H-814. Are there any amendments prior to third reading? Seeing none, listen to the third reading of the bill.
H-814, An act relating to neurological rights and the use of artificial intelligence technology in health and human services.
The question is, shall the bill pass in concurrence? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and we have passed H 814 in concurrence. We now have H 941. Are there any amendments prior to third reading? Seeing none, listen to the third reading.
H 941, an act relating to municipal regulation of agriculture.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill, and the question is, shall the bill pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we've passed H 941 in concurrence with proposal of amendment. Okay. How far down is that? My understanding is that you would like to move to the capital bill, Senator?
It's heavy.
52. I got it right here. I'm gaining on it, Melissa. We now have on the calendar for action H 952, which passed the House on April 28th of 2026. It was referred to the Committee on Institutions, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the Senate propose to the House that the bill be amended as it appears starting on page 2128 of today's calendar, and that with such proposal of amendment, the bill ought to pass. Affecting the revenues of the state, the bill was referred to the Committee on Finance, which recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment as recommended by the Committee on Institutions. Affecting the expenditures of the state, the bill was referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment as recommended by the Committee on Institutions, with further proposal of amendment as found in today's calendar on page 2137. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 952, an act relating to capital construction and state bond budget adjustment.
Recognize the senator from Wyndham District for the report of the Committee on Institutions.
Thank you, Mr. President. H 952 is this year's capital bill adjustment, updating the two-year bill adopted last year as Act 33. As we are in the second year of the biennium, this bill amends the prior bill. Our focus today will be on the FY27 projects and bonded dollars. The language of the bill starts on page 2128 of today's calendar. Now, the spreadsheet was just handed out, and we'll get to that soon. But in the meantime, senators will recall that we adhere to the recommendations of the Capital Debt Affordability Advisory Committee, or CDAC, for the biennial bonding limit. In this two-year capital bill, the limit was $100 million total for the 2 years. It's notable that the limit was influenced by the backlog of projects from the pandemic and the floods, leaving a surplus of funding not used. If not for this backlog, the recommendation would likely have been higher if the CDAC considered just the financial conditions of the state. So, going to the spreadsheet. There are three main sections when you look at the spreadsheet. The governor recommend is in beige, the House approved in red, and the Senate committee proposed amendments in green. Each section includes sets of columns for each of the 2 fiscal years, showing funding through bonding and cash and the total for that year. Now, the cash funding is included in the already approved appropriations bill. My review will focus on the FY27 bond funding and the total amounts of bonding and cash. So what I'd like you to do is start at the end of the spreadsheet, which is often what people want to see anyway, which is you have your spreadsheet, just flip the whole thing over, the whole packet over. And at the bottom, you'll see lines 203 and 204. And if you look at each section, it's the end of the section. So in the governor recommend, you'll see 158,986,915. Does everyone see that? Hope you do. That is the total of the governor's recommend. If you go to the right at the end of the red section, which is the House, it's 159,550,328, which is the House recommend or the House approved. And then at the far end is the Senate recommendation, Senate institutions recommendation, which is 160,419,178. So those are big numbers. The total project cost and capital funding of both bonded dollars and cash are on those lines. 160 million is significantly more than 100 million. So the reason that that occurred is that the CDAC proposed amount is for new general obligation bonding. And you can see the total of 100 million on line 180, back on that back page, which is capital borrowing GO bonding. So that's general obligation bonding, and you'll see that that is limited at 100 million. The roughly 60 million increase in projects and funding is mostly a function of previous amounts allocated but not spent, which is roughly 44 million, bond premiums, 14 million, and interest received on the cash, 1.8 million. So that's just the revenue summary. So please go back to the front of the spreadsheet where you'll see the different sections. The first grouping of projects in section 2 is the Agency of Administration, specifically Buildings and General Services, or BGS. This section provides funding to maintain state-owned buildings and property. Roughly half of the funding in this section is in major maintenance on line 1, and it's $17.8 million. This funding provides BGS the flexibility to repair and maintain the 243 buildings for which they are responsible, more than 400 million square feet. Examples are office buildings, parking garages, courthouses, public safety buildings, and the State House. Before we received the capital bill, the House capital bill, we received a letter from the administration expressing concern with House changes of 5 projects. We took testimony and addressed the concerns, and I'll highlight those projects as we go through the spreadsheet. One of the 5 items in the letter is in this section on line 4, 3-acre parcel stormwater compliance for state-owned properties. This is partial funding for 8 sites within the Lake Champlain and Memphremagog watersheds. The governor's recommend was a total of 2.6 million in bonded dollars, which you can see in columns B, C, and D. This is a good example of the structure of the spreadsheet, and I can go into it more later if somebody wishes. The House removed 1.5 million of the bonded dollars. This is column I and J. Senate institutions put back $1 million of funding in cash rather than bonded dollars. BGS will use the 2.1 million total of bonded and cash for the 3-acre projects. So I know that's a lot of moving parts, but the overall impact is that because one of the 8 sites is the Capitol complex, and much of that work will need to wait until the FEMA 23 flood process is past the next stage, the 2.1 million will be sufficient for the coming year. That's what matters the most. The 2.1 million that you'll see in the Senate proposal will be sufficient. The other change in this section is to add 25,000 to the State House entryway project to plan for a second floor egress. Okay, section 3, Agency of Human Services, is primarily corrections facilities and includes the other 4 items that are in the administration's letter. On line 8, door controls, the House reduced funding as the project seemed stalled. But by the time the Senate considered the item, a contract had been signed and the Senate replaced the $2 million. The Northern State boiler replacement, line 29, has been in multiple capital bills and is a complicated project impacting stormwater and site design. We were able to add back most of the funding by increasing bonded dollars by $700,000. BGS staff was okay with this change as the project will continue through FY28 and the funding needs will be better defined. This project will reduce operating costs and provide environmental benefits by replacing the boiler fuel of number 2 oil with wood pellets. Both the House and Senate committees are concerned with the slow implementation of functional Wi-Fi in the correctional facilities. This is line 31. For the staff and the inmates, it's crucial to have connectivity to the outside world. The administration budgeted 0, counting on a funding source which we understand is not feasible. In response, the House proposed $3 million to make sure that the project is prioritized and initiated. We in the Senate had multiple discussions with the administration and BGS regarding the physical challenges and agreed to $250,000 for planning with the understanding that the administration will prioritize this project. The final item of the 5 in the administration letter is on line 32. The administration noted that the women's prison has sufficient funding allocated to start the project for a new prison. That may be, but the Senate Institutions Committee is very concerned about the conditions of the current prison. So we added $598,650 in bonds and $500,000 in cash to renovate the bathrooms particularly and make other necessary repairs. The funding would also allow renovations at other sites if that was required. Line 32A is a new item that allocates $220,000 to Recovery House. We supported Recovery House in the 23 capital budget for a similar project. The $220,000 is to repair the headquarters of Recovery House, which is the only nonprofit addiction treatment provider in the state. So next page of the, now you're going to have to open the pages. Section 5, lines 46 and 47, historic preservation and barn preservation grants are increased by $100,000 each. These matching grants go directly to Vermonters and are an extremely cost-effective method to preserve these structures across the state. In 2025, 23 barn grants were awarded out of 31 applicants, with an average grant of approximately $16,000. 19 historic preservation grants were awarded out of 32 applicants with an average of $17,000 per grant. So these are minimal grants, but they are very impactful. Lines 59 and 60 include funding for significant ongoing renovations to the Vermont Veterans Home in Bennington. We agreed with the House construct, so there are no new changes. I continue, and the rest of the committee also feel this way, to just be impressed with the diligence of the staff to get the best value for state dollars in this project, which is improving the living conditions of our veterans. Line 83A would provide $100,000 to Vermont towns for design and implementation of stormwater utilities. I'll talk more later about stormwater utilities. Next page, line 126, the Newport Courthouse replacement. This project has been discussed for years. The courthouse has security challenges and life safety concerns, accessibility issues, and sits at a prominent corner of the downtown. The town is working through the site planning, and the administration reallocated $750,027 in cash for this project. And this is also the judiciary's top priority to replace. So that's it for the spreadsheet, and I can pause here for questions. Okay. I guess.
No, sorry.
I'm probably not. Yeah, okay,
Excuse
sorry.
me, I was looking
was
at the
my other
spreadsheet,
Okay.
but when you're done your presentation, each senator will have the opportunity to stand up and question you.
Right, and then we have the other committees also. So, scratch that. So I will now review the instances of change in the language of the bill, which will have basically the items that I discussed in the spreadsheet. And so if you want to go to the calendar on page 2128, and if you are interested, you might need to look at the as passed by House also, because the language of the bill, the structure of the proposed amendment is not a strike all, so I'll need to refer to the bill as we received it by the House Corrections and Institution, as well as the calendar. So the first instance of amendment, section 1 of Act 33, last year's act, established the total bonding amount for the biennial capital budget. This increase of $868,850 reflects money proposed by the House and reallocated to be put to new use. Second instance, section 2 of Act 33 sets out the bond-funded project authorizations for state buildings. This instance amends the House proposal for 2 FY27 appropriations. Major maintenance is decreased by $475,000, and State House entryway upgrades are increased by $25,000, and the project scope is expanded to include the second floor egress design. Third instance, appropriations for BGS for the Agency of Human Services, primarily corrections. This repeals the FY27 appropriation for a sprinkler system upgrade at the Northern State Correctional Facility in Newport. It's project's still going to happen. This appropriation is shifted to cash in a later section. It adds new FY27 appropriations for $700,000 for boiler replacement at Newport, $220,000 to Recovery House, and $598,850 for maintenance, replacement, and renovations at the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility. Okay, and then we go to the fourth instance. Section 5 of Act 33 includes the bond-funded project authorizations in the building communities grants, increasing the allocations to the historic preservation and barn preservation grants by $100,000 each. Fifth instance, Section 9 of Act 33 establishes the bond-funded project authorizations for the Agency of Natural Resources. This instance amends the House proposal by adding a new FY27 appropriation of $100,000 to ANR for support to municipalities to design and implement stormwater utilities. Sixth instance, Section 17 of Act 33 sets out the reallocations and reversions of older capital bill funds, adds the words and reversion to better describe leftover cash funds as opposed to reallocation of bond funds. The Senate added number 19, Women's Correctional Facilities, of $868,850 on page 2132. Seventh instance, Section 19 of Act 33 sets out the cash-funded project authorizations. As I noted, these are already in the appropriations bill we approved. You can see these on pages 2134 through 2136 of the calendar. And those are F3, a new $1 million for 3 acres parcel compliance. F9, $2 million increase for door controls at correctional facilities. F11, new $500,000 for sprinkler at Northern State. That's the one that we removed from the bonding. F12, $750,000 decrease for Chittenden Regional and a change in the scope to address maintenance and renovations rather than replacement. F22, 2.75 million decrease for installation of Wi-Fi funding in correctional facilities. Eighth instance, new language in section 13. And so this is new and I haven't spoken about it yet. The House bill, and you can see this on, I think, 17 and 18 pages 17 and 18 on the House bill. The House bill authorizes the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation to enter into a 40-year lease. Its initial 20-term year with an option for 2 10-year renewals at the Little River State Park with an organization, Vermont Huts, to renovate a historic structure and create lodging for trail users. Vermont Huts has received federal funding for the renovation, and it looks like a wonderful project. The concern is what is not in the language authorizing the department to enter into an agreement. The language on page 18 of the House bill lists the subjects that need to be included in the lease, such as term, fee, or fee formula to compensate the state, conditions and boundaries, but it provides no range or limit of these items. It's essentially a blank check. We in Senate institutions did not have time to suggest specific parameters. So this language to negotiate rather than enter into a lease is a starting point with the House in a committee of conference. Ninth instance, this section 14A repeals the authority of BGS to sell 110 State Street, Montpelier. This is the historic building directly across State Street from the pavilion. You can probably see it if you look out that window. And it is currently used primarily by the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs. We authorized this sale in 2023. In the meantime, BGS has had to prioritize flood rehab of buildings in the Capitol complex and has not put this building up for sale. With the changes in working locations, it's prudent to keep this building in state ownership. 10th instance, this amendment amends the chapters of Title 24 on municipal and regional planning and development and on sewage disposal and stormwater systems to ensure that existing municipal authority to regulate stormwater is not disrupted by the creation of a regional stormwater utility. So that is the bill. The committee vote was 5-0-0, and we ask for the Senate support.
Recognize the senator from Chittenden North for the report of the Committee on Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Finance took a look at the capital bill, and we heard from our JFO office and also Legislative Council, and found there to be a de minimis impact on state revenues, as the chair of institutions mentioned about the lease. That's primarily where we focused on, and now that it's going to be negotiated instead of entered into, maybe in the future there may be impacts on state revenues. So on a vote of 6-0-1, the Senate Finance Committee recommends support of H952. Thank you.
Recognize the senator from Washington District, Senator Perchlik, for the report of the Committee on Appropriations.
Thank you, President. Your Appropriations Committee looked over the capital bill for any appropriations. The appropriations of the bonded dollars are squarely in the jurisdiction of the Institutions Committee, so we didn't really look at those. There are the cash fund appropriations, but these are appropriations we already had looked at for the big bill, the budget. So all of these 22 cash expenditures on pages 2136 and 2135 are already in the budget as passed the Senate. So if we were to make any changes here, we'd have to make changes to the budget. So we had reviewed and already approved all of those. So we're fine with passing the bill favorably, but then we learned of an amendment. So I assume I could just sort of describe that now.
You may.
So it's like something that came to institutions kind of late was the entryway design, which you'll see on line 12 of the spreadsheet, is to redo the entryway there, the loading dock. So we have, there was a special committee that had been working on this in the past. The authority for the special committee had expired, and Sergeant at Arms and my understanding is the institutions committee was supportive of kind of just giving the committee, I think they changed who was on it a little bit, but reconstituting the special committee. Since we had the bill, we just agreed in appropriations to add this language in so that we could have a special committee to oversee the spending on that entryway project. So the committee voted 7-0-0 to pass the bill as amended favorably.
The question is, shall the recommendation of proposal of amendment of the Committee on Institutions be amended as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? Do you both have questions on the appropriations amendment?
Thank you, Mr. President. I do not.
Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've amended the recommendation of proposal of amendment of the Committee on Government Institutions. Melissa tried to trick me there. As recommended by the Committee on Appropriations. Now would be the appropriate time for questions. Senator from Addison.
It's been confusing, all the pauses here. And first of all, I want to say I noticed the joy of the senator from Windsor on not selling off that beautiful building. I remember in 2023 when she was very sad and objected to that. So it's really nice to have it come around to not selling that beautiful building. But Mr. President, may I inquire of the reporter of the bill?
The reporter's interrogated.
Thank you. So when this bill was in finance, I asked a question about the courthouses and never got an answer. And I don't know that you'll have the answer. I don't know that the reporter will have the answer, Mr. President, but I would like to see if you could get this answer for me by third reading. So last year, you might recall, when we did the capital bill, I raised some concerns about a different courthouse project and whether or not the county was pitching in the appropriate amount of funds for that project. And later in a miscellaneous judiciary bill, we did pass some language related to county obligations for courthouse projects. And so when this bill was in finance, I specifically asked that it seems like there are two courthouse projects in here, one related to the Newport courthouse replacement, and then one related to the White River Junction courthouse. The complication with courthouses, Mr. President, is sometimes they're owned by the state and sometimes they're owned by the county. So I was just wondering if on third reading you could, unless you know now, Mr. President, but if you don't, if you could let me know which, I think the White River Junction courthouse is state-owned and the other one might be county-owned. And so I'm wondering, first of all, if that is which, and then for the county-owned, if there is one that is county-owned, whether the county has done the required sort of pitch in the required amount of funding. And if you know the answer now, that would be great, Mr. President. If not, if I could get that for third reading, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that. And yes, I would like to double check, especially since the question is about two courthouses. I want to double check, and I will bring that.
Great. If that could be for third reading, I would appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Orleans.
Yeah, Mr. President, I believe, I have forgotten, the cash portion of this bill was approved during the appropriations bill process.
Would you like to present someone with a question?
Yes, the senator from Washington.
You can interrogate
I'm sorry.
interrogate the reporter of the bill.
Sure. Thank
The
you.
reporter of the bill is interrogated. Okay, sorry. The senator from Washington can respond as the reporter.
So, Mr. President, is the question whether all the cash fund expenditures were in the budget? If that's the question, then the answer is yes. All of these 22 expenditures of the cash fund of cash, non-funded dollars, were reviewed and placed in whole into the budget, H951.
Okay, so Mr. President, the 36,854,000. And then the cash, are those all general fund dollars, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President, those are all general fund dollars.
Okay. And Mr. President, I'm not sure on the bonding, I think I need to talk to the reporter of the underlying bill.
The reporter of the bill is interrogated.
So was it $100 million? Is that what you get every single year, Mr. President?
So the CDAC makes a recommendation before each biennium, and the most recent recommendation was 100 million for both of the years in this biennium. We show it as 50 million each year. It doesn't have to be that. It could be 60-40, but the total that we choose to allocate for bonded dollars is 100 million. We're not required to go by CDAC, but we do.
Okay, so Mr. President, on the bottom page for capital funding, the total bonded amount is 123,564,000, right?
Yes. Oh, thank you, Mr. President, for that question. Yes, and that includes the bond premium. You can see that on line 181. And then there's some other increases, which I can talk to staff and let you know.
Mr. President, so it seems like the cash stayed consistent throughout the process from the governor's recommend, the House and the Senate, and it seems like the wiggle room seems to come from the bonding authority of the bill. Is that correct?
So, thank you for that question. I would say the flexibility, I wouldn't call it wiggle room, but I would say the flexibility is mostly in the cash, but it's also in the bonded because we aren't assured of these premiums. I mean, that's basically a bonus that we get when we bond. We don't know what they're going to be. But there's a lot of flexibility in both sources, which makes it more complicated when we put items together. And and just to expand a little bit, the cash is more flexible than the bonding. The bonding dollars need to be traditionally capital dollar or capital funds that have a long term and at least 5 years, but we prefer 20 years is what's in the statute. So the bonded dollars are more restricted.
And the bonded dollars are general obligation bonds.
General obligation bonds, right?
And is through, I'm guessing, the Vermont Bond Bank?
No, the treasurer handles these bonds. The bond bank handles municipal bonds and other bonds.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, President.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I interrogate the reporter of the bill?
The reporter's interrogated.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to bring the chamber back to a kind of an older conversation in relation to 3-acre impervious stormwater modifications, in particular relevant to the Vermont State Fairgrounds. And I notice on line 4, there's a statewide 3-acre parcel stormwater line, and also line 52, agricultural fair field days capital project. I'm just wondering if the committee contemplated supporting the Vermont State Fairgrounds in their request to mitigate the 3-acre stormwater impervious surface rule to the benefit of that particular site, given that the cost of their project far exceeds their receipts on an annual basis, and but the notional cost of the project itself to provide clean water downstream, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that. The committee has in multiple years heard from the Rutland Fair. We hear from all of the fairs, but we have heard from the State Fair in Rutland. And the costs are tremendous compared to their income. We have provided support. As you noted, the 3-acre parcel stormwater funding in section 2 is not for the fairs. The fairs are handled on a different line item. But yes, and I can get you more information before third reading. I'd like to get you specific information on what we've done.
Okay, I thank the reporter. Thank you. We're in Rutland County. We're quite concerned with the status of the Vermont State Fair, and just trying to make sure that we maintain visibility on a kind of an icon of the state. Certainly in our region, we can very quickly bankrupt that facility, given our legislative action to impose a 3-acre impervious surface rule, compared to what we support them with budget to mitigate for the same effect. And again, we can very quickly take them, take them into bankruptcy, given the nature of that necessary investment. So I just want to maintain the Chamber's awareness of the situation there, that the Vermont State Fair revenues could not provide even 1/10 of the necessary costs to support such a project, and we could very quickly lose a state icon. But thank you, Mr. President. I thank the committee and thank the chair for their diligent work on the capital budget. Thank you.
Senator from Windsor.
Speaking of state icons, I would like to thank both the House and the Senate for their support of the continued work on the renovation of the State House, one of our most treasured buildings in Vermont, certainly one of the most visited by our tourists, in major need of upgrades, both for our disabled community, for our entryway, for the whole way you enter and are oriented to this magnificent living museum. I am so grateful to you for supporting the work that continues, the design and engineering work on this important project, and thank you very much.
Senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I inquire of the reporter of the bill?
The reporter's interrogated.
Mr. President, the $13 million in bond premium, can you define that for me, please? What that includes or what that is?
Yes. Thank you. Happy to. When we go out to bond, there is, we put it out to bid, basically, our bond, saying that we're essentially borrowing long-term funding. If the folks who are buying the bonds, if they appreciate the value of Vermont bonds and expect them to be sold at a higher level than the expected price, then they sometimes will pay more for those. So it's a premium because we actually have a really good track record and bond rating for multiple bond rating companies. So even though we're small, folks like Vermont bonds in their portfolio, and so that's one of the reasons that that we receive a premium.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't know if 13.7% is a great premium rate as a businessman doing loans. I just don't understand why it's so high, but thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Wyndham?
Yeah, I would just like to respond to that. So that's in addition to the payment that we get with interest. The premium is on top of that. So I can provide the interest payment to the state also.
Senator from Essex?
I'd just like to help with that a little bit. So that $13 million+ million is a really kind of a reward to Vermont for the way that they issue their bonds and pay their bonds and pay the debt and all of that. So these companies that are looking to give us $100 million looked at all of what Vermont's doing and said, you know what, they're not so much of a risk, so we don't have to be as careful. So in addition to giving $100 million worth of bond ratings, we're going to give them another $13 million plus worth of dollars because we really kind of like the way Vermont's doing their business. And that, yes, we'll give you the $100 million, but to ensure that we actually get the right to issue those $100 million, we're going to give you another $13 million on top of that because we like the way that you guys pay your bills. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Chittenden Central?
May I inquire of the presenter?
The reporter is interrogated.
I have a really specific kind of in the weeds question on page 9, or actually, if you're in your calendar, it's 2133, down at the bottom on line 17. It looks like we're taking back almost $1 million in spending to install EV charging stations, and I'm just wondering why.
Right, thank you. I'd like to get you more detailed information, but in the meantime, it was what the administration told us that they did not need anymore, but I'd like to get more information. There's more details.
Would appreciate that on third reading. I'm just curious because I, as an EV driver, would argue we actually don't have enough EV stations. So if there's $1 million, I would suggest we use it to make more. So I'd appreciate that on third reading. Thank you.
Senator from Windsor?
And I would like to add to that, to fix the ones that we already have. Thank you.
Would seem we could set a better example at the State House charging stations.
We could.
Are there any further questions? The question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Institutions as amended? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've proposed to the House to amend the bill as proposed by the Committee on Institutions as amended. The question now is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of H 952. Yes, sir. We will go back to the top of the calendar, which brings us to, we have on the calendar for action H 639, which was passed by the House February 27th of 26, was referred to the Committee on Economic Development, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the Senate propose to the House that the bill be amended as it appears, starting on page 2123 of today's calendar, and that with such proposal of amendment, the bill ought to pass. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 639, an act relating to genetic data privacy.
I will recognize the senator from Windsor District, Senator Clarkson, for the report of the Committee on Economic.
I hate to interrupt. It would be my suggestion that we suspend our rules in order to allow the senator a glass of water on the floor.
I was taking my time so she could hopefully stop choking. We will take a brief recess while the senator gets a glass of water.
So then we have 100.
Will the Senate please come to order?
Never really tried.
When I look at a spreadsheet, it's me. This is.
Senator from Windsor, if you are ready, the floor is yours.
What's this? Oh. Thank you. As anyone who serves with me on a committee knows, I have a tipped larynx, and when it shuts down, the whole system shuts down. So, I apologize, it only takes a second to recover. A genetic fault. And that is perfect for the introduction into this bill. So, you have before you H639. In H639, an act relating to genetic data privacy, your Senate Economic Development Committee brings you yet another consumer protection bill by creating genetic data privacy protections for all Vermonters. It requires direct-to-consumer genetic testing companies to provide clear and complete, I'm getting ahead of myself. This bill does the following. It protects your most important data, your genetic data. It requires direct-to-consumer genetic testing companies to provide clear and complete information regarding the company's policies and procedures for the collection and use of consumers' genetic data. It requires consumers to consent to having their genetic data sold, shared, or marketed. Consumers can revoke their consent if they change their mind. The genetic data companies must develop reasonable security procedures. Consumers can delete their data. It has been vetted by other states, and it's enforced by the Consumer Protection Act. Genetic data represents some of the most important personal and sensitive information that exists. Genetic data is not just about people. Genetic data represents the fundamental essence of the biological human being. Our genetic data is who we are in a most intimate sense. While Vermonters are concerned these days about the need to protect their privacy in general, we are especially and intensely concerned about the need for privacy with respect to our own genetic data. The need to protect personal genetic information recently gained visible and national attention in 2023, when personal genetic data in the possession of a major genetic testing company was improperly stored, subsequently hacked, and exposed nationwide on the internet. During the course of dealing with the fallout of the data privacy breach, additional privacy problems with genetic testing companies were identified from the manner in which companies used and transferred data to how the companies secured and stored genetic data and genetic material, to the lack of precision and credibility of the methods used to secure consumers' consent to the use and transfer of their genetic data. H639 addresses these genetic data privacy concerns. It will provide among the strongest genetic privacy protections for consumers in the world. Our work in this legislation will ensure that Vermont consumers are in the best position possible to control and protect their genetic data and privacy at all times. Senators can find on their desks the bill itself as it passed out of the House, and the Senate's amendment on page 2123 in today's calendar. And I'd like, with permission, to speak to both as I go through the bill. Thank you. The bill starts by creating a new data privacy chapter in Title IX. And a specific subchapter for the genetic data privacy. Section 2421A sets forth the short title of this act, which is the Genetic Information Privacy Act. The section also includes the definitions used in the bill, which include biological sample, direct-to-consumer genetic testing company, express consent, genetic data, and service providers. Section 2421B sets forth the requirements of the bill. Most requirements apply to only direct-to-consumer genetic testing companies. They must provide privacy terms to consumers, which includes information about the company's collection and disclosure of genetic data. It also clarifies when it must get the express consent of a consumer to do something with a consumer's genetic data. For example, consent is required for storing the consumer's data after the testing service has been fulfilled, using the genetic data beyond the primary purpose of the genetic testing, and transferring the genetic data to a third party. Certain marketing to the consumer also requires express consent, and if applicable, disclosure. We were very impressed by one of the genetic testing companies who provide consent at every point, and it makes it very easy for you to agree to consent to the areas they would like you to be able to either share or disclose, and which I was impressed by. This section also sets forth when a consumer can revoke consent previously given. A direct-to-consumer genetic testing company must honor the revocation request within 30 days of the request. This revocation right includes the deletion of genetic data and the destruction of a biological sample. Direct-to-consumer genetic testing companies must also develop procedures that allow consumers to access and delete their genetic data, as well as requesting the company to destroy their biological samples. A contract between a direct-to-consumer genetic testing company and its service provider is required to include terms that the service provider must maintain the privacy of any consumer genetic data or biological samples they hold during the term of the contract. Once the contract ends, the service provider must delete any genetic data and destroy biological samples associated with that company. The bill also prevents direct-to-consumer genetic testing companies from discriminating against consumers who choose to exercise the rights provided in the bill by changing such consumers different prices or denying certain services to such consumers. Direct-to-consumer genetic testing companies are not permitted to disclose consumer genetic data to an entity responsible for making decisions about health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, or employment. That is so key. These companies also cannot disclose information about a consumer to a government entity unless presented with a search warrant or if the consumer expressly consents such a disclosure. Finally, the Genetic Information Privacy Act is enforced through the Vermont Consumer Protection Act and is effective July 1st, 2026. Our committee recommends that the version passed by the House be amended in 2 instances, which you will find on page 2123 in your calendar. First, the committee was advised that we had a technical error that needed to be corrected in subsection D of section 2421B. The amendment would clarify that it's the genetic data and biological samples, not biometric data, of consumers that shall not be transferred or stored outside the U.S. without the express consent of the consumer. That's the first instance. And the second instance of amendment amends the enforcement language to require a 60-day cure period for any alleged violation of the law. A consumer who wants to file a civil action against a direct-to-consumer genetic testing company or service provider for an alleged violation must write to the company and provide them with 60 days to cure any alleged violation before filing a suit. This was an important compromise that we reached, and which is how we got to the following 5-0 vote. So we created a 60-day cure period to cure any alleged violation. We heard from 10 witnesses And, we heard from the Vermont Forensic Lab, which is in the Department of Public Safety. We heard from the AG's office. We heard from the head of government affairs, Ancestry.com. We heard from the vice president privacy and product company. We heard from Bridget Morris and Morris Strategies, Herb Olson, the representative from Bristol, Representative Raman Shai, who's the sponsor of the bill, our own fabulous legislative counsel, Rick Sagel, and the Defender General, Matt Valerio, and Thomas Weiss, resident of Montpelier. And with that, with our committee vote of 5-0, we ask for the Senate's support to further protect Vermonters and their most private data. Thank you.
Senator, I think we have just had some training that would suggest we don't use names on the floor, just so that everybody highlights that we use positions and not individual names. The question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I inquire the presenter of
The presenter's interrogated.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question about the first instance of amendment from the committee, which is on page 2123, noting that the data should not be stored outside of the country or any country that's designated as a foreign adversary. That makes sense to me. Part B that mentions that the transfer can only to outside the country can only happen with the express consent of the consumer. I am wondering about that process and just thinking about the many times in people's lives when they, something pops up that they have to agree to in order to access a service, or, the terms or the conditions have changed, and should I just click yes? And people don't really think about that, and thinking about how this could be slipped into something like that, where people are perhaps not paying particularly close attention. So that's a concern of mine. So I'm wondering about that. And I'm going to mention the one other concern I have as well, which is the part where it's not to be stored within a country that's designated as a foreign adversary, that there's a particular interest to not do that, even if the consumer consents, that there may be reasons why you just don't, that should not be an option. Curious if the senator could comment on that.
Well, we agree on the second one. It should be, I agree. And on the first, I'm happy to defer and take a moment to talk to legislative counsel, the unnamed legislative counsel. Hard to find them if you don't know who you're looking for. Anyway, I would say that I am very impressed. There are 3 major direct-to-consumer genetic testing companies. They are very clear in each one of the consent pieces. As you go bit by bit through the consents that you have to do, they are very clear on what you're consenting to, from what I've seen. And for that, for a further answer, I would ask for one moment of recess.
Senator, I think if you look down at the note on your desk, there may be an answer there.
Oh, it's better yet. When you can't look at your phone, you can look at a piece of paper. So, thank you. Express consent, of course, you have to be able to read it, is defined to avoid a simple checkbox to agree to all terms. Express consent is defined to avoid a simple checklist to agree to all terms. And that is what I have noticed they do. Each term has a very specific section and you agree and consent to that very specific section.
Thank you for that answer, and wondering about the possibility of still sending that data to be stored with a foreign adversary. Or I'm also happy to ask that question offline.
May I take one moment to confirm what I thought was the answer, which is not to be stored in any territory outside of the United States.
We'll take a brief recess.
Happy to.
We can't do that.
Limit was recommended.
Will the Senate please come to order? Senator from Washington, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe my question was answered, and I understand it now that that is not an option, that both of these statements must be true. So I'm feeling satisfied, and I thank the reporter.
Thank you. Can be unnamed.
Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have one question for the presenter of the
The
amendment.
presenter is interrogated.
If I might. I'm looking at the as passed by the House version. On page 2, there's a definition for dark pattern, but as I look through the bill, I don't see the phrase appear in the bill, and I'm wondering if the senator can direct me to it.
Excuse me, Mr. President, dark pattern is defined on line 12. Sorry, I guess I just didn't hear the question.
Mr. President, I do see the definition, but I don't see in the bill the phrase dark pattern, so I'm wondering, is it just an errant definition, or is it somewhere in the bill that I haven't identified?
This is a question for legislative counsel. So I need to take one moment to ask.
Third reading would be fine, Mr. President.
Sorry, I just need to find out. So one moment.
The senator from Chittenden said if you could find out before third reading, that would be fine, so we could keep the flow going here.
You're right. Okay, thank you. We will find out more about dark patterns.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've proposed to the House to amend the bill as proposed by the Committee on Economic Development. The question now is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of H 639. We have on the calendar for action H 739, which was passed by the House on April 31. It was referred to the Committee on Agriculture, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the Senate propose to the House that the bill be amended as it appears starting on page 2124 of today's calendar, and that with such proposal of amendment, the bill ought to pass. Affecting the expenditures of the state, the bill was referred to the Committee on Appropriations. which recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment as recommended by the Committee on Agriculture. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 739, an act relating to prohibiting the use and sale of the herbicide paraquat.
Recognize the senator from Windsor District for the report of the Committee on Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, as a freshman senator, there have been times where I have been disappointed with the process of what we do, not only in this chamber, but in our committees. This bill and how it went through our committee restored my faith. I will also say a few weeks ago, I used the term making sausage. This was a beautiful Polska kielbasa. And I will tell you, if you have not been to Buffalo, Mr. President, the Assistant Secretary of the Senate, as well as the senior senator from Windsor, as well as myself, who are all have lived in Buffalo, will take you to the Broadway Market on Easter weekend so you can have such a taste. H 739 establishes a statewide prohibition on the sale, use, and application of paraquat, a highly toxic herbicide, while for limited, temporary, and restricted regulation exemptions. It also creates a reporting requirement to ensure legislative oversight at any continued use. I want to go section by section. Section 1, subsection A, definitions. This subsection defines paraquat comprehensively by listing its chemical form and identifiers, including paraquat ion, paraquat dichloride, paraquat sulfate, and all salts of paraquat. The purpose is to ensure that all known formulas of the herbicide are covered under the law, preventing any regulatory loopholes based on chemical variations or naming differences. Subsection B, prohibition. This section establishes the core policy of the bill. It prohibits any person from selling, using, or applying paraquat in Vermont. The only exception is when such activity is explicitly authorized by the Secretary of Agriculture, Food, and Markets under subsection C. In effect, this creates a default statewide ban, shifting paraquat from general use to a lightly controlled exemption. Subsection C, authorized use. This subsection outlines a limited, temporary exemption process. The Secretary of Agriculture may issue written permits allowing paraquat use only for fruit-producing tree orchards, crops within the USDA berry and small fruit crops and groups. These exemptions are time-limited and expire no later than December 31st of 2030. Permit conditions include applications must be certified and have complete required training within the past year. Permits are valid no more than 3 years, and permits must clearly be defined. The specific product, the approved uses and crops, the geographic scope, down to the specific farm or fields, and the duration of the permit. Safety and environmental protections. It required drift mitigation measures consistent with the federal guidance. It also strictly adhered to label instructions to reduce application exposure. And the application is limited to targeted areas, 3 rolls or vine rolls only. This subsection balances agricultural needs for certain specific crops with public health and environmental protections, while setting a clear sunset on continued use. Subsection D, reporting requirements. This subsection ensures transparency, legislative oversight, and continued stoppage when the bill is done. The Secretary must submit an annual report detailing the amount of paraquat used, the dates used, location where it is applied. The report is due on December 15th of each year and is submitted to the House Committee on Agriculture, Food, Resiliency, and Forestry, as well as the Senate Committee on Agriculture. This requirement allows the legislature to monitor trends, assess risks, and evaluate whether continued exemptions remain appropriate. Section 2, effective date. This act takes effect on November 1st of 2026. This delay is effective because it provides time for farmers and applicators to adjust practices. It gives the Agency of Agriculture a time to establish the permitting process and outreach for compliance preparation. H 739 represents a significant policy change towards restricting the use of a highly hazardous herbicide while recognizing limited short-term agricultural needs. The bill establishes a clear pathway towards eventual phase-out, incorporates strong safety controls, and ensures ongoing legislative oversight through the annual reporting. The Committee on Agriculture recommends the Senate propose to the House that the bill is recommended and passed as amended. It passed for a vote of 5-0-0. I think it's important that I go through some of the witnesses that we had in committee. We had an owner of Peck Farm Orchards, a professor of neurology sources at UVM. We had our general counsel of agriculture. We had an associate professor of UVM. We had various people that on different sides of this bill to really take an informed look at how we should do this, how this bill should come out of committee. The chair of our committee, the senator from Essex, often says how proud he is of the work that we have done. I am most proud of this work. We took a measured approach to how we came out of this, how this bill came out of committee. And so I hope that the Senate will approve the amendment going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from Franklin District for the report of the Committee on Appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Appropriations reviewed H 739. There was no fiscal note attached to this. We heard from JFO, we heard from Ledge Council, and it was determined that this particular bill had a less than de minimis effect on the state revenues appropriations, I might add. So on a 7-0-0 vote, the committee recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence with the proposal of amendment as recommended by the Committee of Agriculture.
Well, congratulations to the Agriculture Committee, because I've never heard a bill come out with a less than de minimis amount. The question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Agriculture? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hate to rise and take away from the excellent report given by the Vice Chair of Senate Agriculture. But this bill was a challenging bill for our committee, and I am always proud of the work that we do in our committee. This one right here could have easily gone a lot of different ways. It could have hung up on the wall. Certainly probably had enough votes for that. We could have voted in a different way, or we could have ended up the way that we did. And I think that was the right way. I think that this bill came out the way that it ought to. There was certainly a lot of concern about this chemical in the state. And we were able to find a pathway forward to allow farmers to have an exemption through 12/31/2030, and then to where this chemical will be banned forever in the state of Vermont. But just very, very proud of the way that the committee worked together. I said to the committee through this process that we were going to keep on taking testimony until we could all become very clear about the positions that we were going to take. And I think that counting the votes as the chair, we were probably 2-2. But little did the committee know that being a swing vote as the chair, I was really unsure of where I wanted to be. And so we kept on taking testimony until we all, in fact, were able to defend the positions that we were going to do, including the chair in itself. And that's the way the vote went. So yes, very proud of the Senate Agriculture Committee, very proud of the vice chair and his fine report. And I thank the body for concurrence. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Agriculture? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've proposed to the House to amend the bill as proposed by the Committee on Agriculture. The question now is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading. We will be passing over H1816, which brings us to S173, which was passed by the House with proposal of amendment. The question is, shall the Senate concur in the House proposal of amendment? Which committee? I recognize the senator from Rutland. I was hoping someone wanted to speak to this.
Oh, thank you. A bit of a pop-up. May I request to defer until tomorrow? We just discussed this issue in committee. We do have a resolution, but I'm not prepared to do a floor summary. My apologies. I just didn't know this was even on the agenda. It's my hit entirely. So
we can, not a problem to skip over it, Senator. We will move on to JRH10, Joint Resolution authorizing the 2026 Green Mountain Girls State Educational Program to use the State House. This resolution has been read and is set forth in yesterday's journal and is before you. The question is, shall the Senate adopt the Joint House resolution in concurrence? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Ayes have it, and we have adopted the resolution. We now have on the calendar for action H220. It was introduced on February 19th of 2025. It was referred to the Committee on Health and Welfare, which reports. Oh, I will start over. We have on the calendar for action today H270, introduced on February 19th of 2025. It was referred to the Committee on Health and Welfare, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that it ought to pass in concurrence. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
H270, an act relating to confidentiality in peer support sessions for emergency service providers.
Recognize the senator from Orange, Senator Benson, for the report of the Committee on Health and Welfare.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I thought you were going to pass me over for a second time today. But, so if I could, I'd just like to provide a little bit of background for the senators on just relaying some personal experiences that relate to this bill.
You may.
all of our emergency providers actually expose themselves to some pretty horrific events over their tenure in their service. I personally spent 35 years on a small town fire department. And during that period, and I could relate to a number of incidents, but I'll just talk about two. Early in my career in my volunteer service, we got called to a house fire. When we arrived, we were told that there was a young boy still in the house. I was one of two that went in to find that individual. That individual had second and third degree burns over 2/3 of his body. The skin was literally peeling off of the young boy. It was quite a horrific event for all of us who responded. And we didn't have an actual peer support system. We always, when we came back from an incident, gathered and talked through what we had seen and what we had experienced. In another incident, we got called to a vehicle off the road on the interstate. And I and one of the other firefighters, the car was down in the ditch in the median, snow covered. We filed through the snow, got down to the car was locked. We looked in the window, the guy's head was back and his brain matter was on the back of the seat. That was as far as we went, and we realized what the event was and called for the coroner and state police. But that's a small town, 1,200 people. But that happens throughout our state, and people are exposed to some pretty horrific events. And what this bill is centered on is peer support for our emergency providers and for confidentiality in discussing these things that they are exposed to as a way of trying to deal with the impact it has on each individual. So with that, I'd like to then present the section by section of the bill. So section 1 adds to 1872 57C, confidentiality, peer support for emergency service providers. Section A has definitions. It adds various definitions, including emergency service provider, which includes firefighters, EMS, paramedics, law enforcement, correction officials, officers, 911 call takers, emergency communication dispatchers, ski patrol, mental health provider workers in a crisis setting, medical examiners. Peer support communication means oral, written communication, notes, reports, or records arriving out of a peer support service. Peer support session means an individual group peer support session provided by an emergency service peer support specialist or emergency service provider who have been involved in potentially traumatizing events or who are suffering from chronic emotional stress due to their employment or volunteer services. Emergency service peer support specialist means an individual who meets one of the following: has been designated by an employer to serve on an employee-based peer support program or designated by the peer support program to act as a peer resource, has received training in providing peer support to emergency service providers involved in potentially traumatizing events, or is otherwise a member of an organization and recognized Vermont Peer Support Program. Section B, protection for peer support communication. Except as provided in Section D, a peer support communication made during a peer support session led by an emergency service peer support specialist is not allowed to be disclosed by a session participant. Section B, except as provided in Section D, a peer support communication relating to peer session led by an emergency service peer support specialist between a specialist and peer support program staff member, or between peer support program staff members, shall not be disclosed by a party participating in the communication. And Section 2 has Public Record Act exemption. Written peer support communications are exempt from public inspection, copying under the Public Record Act, and exempt itself, and compliance itself is not subject to regular review. Section C, protection for peer support communications in legal proceedings. Except as provided in subsection D, a peer support communication may be a participant of a peer support session led by an emergency service peer support specialist is not admissible in a judicial, administrative, or arbitration proceeding, including during discovery. Prohibition on disclosure do not apply to knowledge acquired by an emergency service provider from observations made during the course of employment or volunteer service, or information acquired by the emergency service provider during the course of employment. And then we move to Section D, the confidentiality exemptions. And one, it says confidentiality protection for peer support sessions and between emergency service peer support specialists and or program do not apply with regard to the following information if provided to an individual designated to receive this information as part of their normal professional duties. Any threat of suicide, homicide made by a session participant, or information contrary relating to a threat of suicide or homicide, information related to abuse of a child or vulnerable adult, any admission of conduct likely to cause a risk to public safety, or any admission of a plan to commit a crime. So Section 2A, nothing in this act prohibits communication between emergency service peer support specialists regarding a peer support session, or between an emergency service peer support specialist and another peer support program staff member. And B, nothing in this act prohibits an emergency service peer support specialist or an emergency service provider participating in a peer support session from disclosing personal experience to the extent the disclosure is consistent with HIPAA. So this is on immunity of civil liability, creates immunity from civil liability for the employee, employer, emergency service, peer support provider, or peer support program regarding any injury or damages arising from the provision of peer support services or any disclosure made unless the conduct of the employer, emergency service peer support provider, or peer support program constitute gross negligence, recklessness, or intentional misconduct. In the section 2, the effective date would be July 1, 2026. The committee heard from the Office of Ledge Counsel, sponsor of the bill, the Burlington Fire Department, and the Professional Firefighters of Vermont. The vote out of committee was 5-0-0, and we would ask for your support of this bill. Thank you.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to say that this bill is a continuation of the work that your Committee on Health and Welfare started a couple of sessions ago with then Commissioner Baker of Department of Corrections. And you heard the testimony and the examples given by the presenter of the bill and how powerful that is, but you can also imagine the distress that that can cause in someone who is participating in an emergency situation. In previous years, we've had folks come in who were wardens, police, state police, fire, and they've been in tears in our room because of their experiences. Having a peer support program is in addition to the current process for a large council that meets every year to look at what's needed to help folks who volunteer their time to help people in dire situations. Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say that this is a very important bill for people who work in our communities every day.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of H-270. We have on the calendar for action H-385, introduced on February 26th of 2025. It was referred to the Committee on Finance, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that it ought to pass in concurrence. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
H-385, an act relating to remedies and protections for victims of coerced debt.
I recognize the senator from Chittenden Central, Senator Ulick, for the report of the Committee on Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know we're getting well beyond lunchtime, and this was a 30-page bill, but I will try to be quick and fast in my reporting and also try not to leave anything important out. I'm proud to be here to report on H-385. It's a bill that provides protections for victims of coerced debt and gives our banking institutions an additional tools to support their clients in protecting their accounts. This legislation is the product of really careful work. Following Act 23, which was signed into law in May of last year, the Department of Financial Regulation convened 2 study committees, and each produced a detailed report that were very helpful to me in working on this. One detailed coerced debt, and the other regarded bank transaction holds. And throughout this session, we've continued to work closely with Vermont lending institutions, attorneys, advocates to craft this legislation and to work with the House. As a matter of fact, the draft that came to us from the House is draft 1.17. So you can see that there was a lot of work done over time. Coerced debt, what is it? It is a form of financial abuse. It is used to control survivors and to prevent them from seeking safety or independence. It occurs when an abusive partner, a trafficker, or a caregiver uses force, threats, or fraud to open credit cards, take out loans, rack up charges in someone else's name. Those are all examples of coerced debt. H385 recognizes a simple but critical principle. Debt created through abuse is not legitimate debt, and survivors should not be forced to carry it for the rest of their lives. 7 states, including Texas, New York, Minnesota, Illinois, and Maine, have all passed coerced debt protections. Following their lead, H385 establishes clear standards and a fair process. It includes safeguards against misuse by both debtors and creditors. The coerced debt provisions can be found in sections 1 and 2 of the bill. Section 1 contains most of the coerced debt provisions. It establishes a new subchapter under Chapter 63 of Title IX. This is the Vermont's Consumer Protection Act. The bill begins with Chapter 2495A, which sets out several key definitions used throughout the entire bill. First, the bill describes several types of documents that may be used to support a victim's claim of coerced debt. These forms of adequate documentation include a report filed with law enforcement detailing the coerced debt, a court order finding the debt was coerced, and a sworn certification from a qualified third-party professional defined later in the bill. Coerced debt is defined to include both secured and unsecured debt incurred as a result of domestic abuse, child abuse, trafficking, or elder abuse. Coerced debt occurs when a perpetrator uses a victim's personal information without their knowledge, or when they force, threaten, intimidate, or otherwise pressure a victim to incur a debt. Think of secured debt, if you haven't heard that term before, as such as like a vehicle loan. The bill preserves the creditor's right to repossess the collateral. Mortgages and commercial loans are excluded from the definition of coerced debt. The bill defines creditor to include any person or entity that owns or collects a debt. The bill defines debtor in this context. The debtor is the person who owes the coerced debt, or a survivor of domestic abuse, child abuse, human trafficking, or abuse, neglect, or exploitation of a vulnerable adult. A qualified third-party professional, this includes individuals with specific licensure or training, such as law enforcement officers, attorneys, healthcare providers, crisis workers who routinely work with victims of abuse. The bill includes a template for the sworn certification these professionals may provide. Finally, the bill defines a statement of coerced debt. This is the written statement that a debtor submits to the creditor, identifying the disputed debt and describing, to the extent possible, how the debt was incurred. The statement must include the identity and contact information of the perpetrator unless the victim signs a sworn statement. That disclosure would likely result in future sorry, let me rephrase that. The statement must include the identity and contact information of the perpetrator unless the victim signs a sworn statement that disclosure would likely result in future abuse to themselves or an immediate family member. So obviously wanting to keep that person safe in this situation. Chapter 2495B establishes that causing another person to incur coerced debt is prohibited, establishing it as a civil offense under Vermont law. 2495C outlines the process a debtor may use to assert a claim of coerced debt. And you can follow along on, if you all got that, Bill, you can follow along. A creditor who needs additional information may request it from the debtor using Model Form A1, which is included in the bill. Once a creditor receives a complete claim, a statement of coerced debt with supporting documentation, that the bill requires the creditor to take several actions within a defined timeline. So within 10 business days of receiving a complete claim, the creditor will cease collection attempts and notify the credit reporting agency the debt is disputed. Within 30 days, the creditor will review the documentation and determine whether to accept or reject the victim's coerced debt claim. And then within 5 days of concluding its review, the creditor shall notify the debtor in writing of its determination and must provide a good faith basis for such determination. If the creditor accepts it, the victim's not liable for the remaining debt, and the creditor must request the debt be removed from the victim's credit report. The creditor may then move to pursue payments from the perpetrator of the coerced debt. If the creditor rejects the claim, the creditor may recommence collection activities, but may not sell or transfer the debt to another party. There are provisions requiring that the creditor, to protect the confidentiality of the debtor's personal information, and a debtor may withhold the identity and contact information of the perpetrator if the debtor signs a sworn statement that such disclosure is likely to result in abuse to the debtor or to a member of the debtor's immediate family. Again, trying to keep that person safe from the perpetrator. In addition, subsection F specifies that with respect to debt secured by tangible property, a creditor retains the right to enforce a security interest through repossession, surrender, or court-ordered seizure of the subject collateral. Chapter 2495D establishes civil legal remedies available to victims and creditors in coerced debt cases. This is where it's detailed in this section. If a creditor brings legal action against a victim of coerced debt, the creditor must prove by a preponderance of the evidence, meaning more likely than not, that the debt was not coerced. And the bill specifies that a debtor may establish a prima facie case that the debt is coerced by submitting to the court a statement of coerced debt and adequate documentation. And prima facie is a legal term that generally means a party has provided through evidence to support a claim such that it will not be dismissed by the court. Once established, it is then incumbent upon the creditor to prove the debt is not coerced. The bill also creates a cause of action against the perpetrator, allowing creditors to seek repayment from the individual who actually caused the debt to be incurred, and allowing debtors to recover any payments that they made on the coerced debt. To protect the safety of survivors in the civil legal process, the bill allows victims to request procedural safeguards such as sealing court records or other protective measures to prevent retaliation. The bill specifies that the perpetrator is not a necessary party to an action between a creditor and a debtor, meaning their participation is not required. However, any court finding of coerced debt is not binding on a perpetrator. A separate legal action directly involving the perpetrator would need to be commenced. If I were still teaching, I would ask if there are any questions at this point, but I will continue. The bill also establishes statutes of limitations as follows. A debtor has 6 years to sue a perpetrator from the date the debtor discovered or reasonably should have discovered the coerced debt, or 6 years from the date the abuse ceased. A creditor has 6 years to sue the perpetrator after becoming aware of the coerced debt, or 6 years from the date the creditor received notice of the identity of the perpetrator. Chapter 2495E specifies that any person who knowingly and materially violates this subchapter commits an unfair and deceptive act under Vermont's existing consumer protection statutes. It also specifies that the Attorney General has authority to investigate and begin a civil action for any violations. 2495F ensures that financial and personally identifying information related to a claim of coerced debt remains confidential, as does any information subject to privilege protections under law unless waived. In addition, such confidential information acquired by a public body is not subject to public inspection under Vermont's Public Records Act. Section 2 amends Vermont's existing credit reporting accuracy dispute procedures to ensure that disputes stemming from coerced debt claims are handled consistently within that framework. As such, consistent with federal law, it requires a credit reporting agency to reinvestigate any debt that is adversely reported on the debtor's credit report with the credit reporting agency when the credit reporting agency is presented with a claim of coerced debt. Section 3 is a technical correction to 9 BSA 2480K, updating references to individuals, and to an amended statute, which is the identity theft statute. So Section 4 of the bill, transition here, pertains to bank transaction holds. This permits a bank to impose a transaction hold in the event of suspected financial exploitation. It strengthens the abilities of Vermont's banks, credit unions, and other financial institutions to protect their customers from increasingly sophisticated frauds. In 2024 alone, the federal government received 973 complaints of scams and cyber frauds from Vermonters, totaling more than 11 million in losses. This works out to an average loss of $12,000 per victim. We know that many frauds go unreported due to embarrassment, shame, or a continued inability to recognize the scam. However, Vermonters are much more likely to disclose these losses to their financial institutions than they are to federal partners. Accordingly, we have worked closely with representatives of these institutions to provide them with additional tools to protect their customers, who are our neighbors, our constituents, sometimes ourselves. Section 4 of the bill establishes a new subchapter under Chapter 200 of Title 8, which pertains to consumer protections under Vermont's banking laws. Section 10801 contains the findings and intent. 10802 contains the definitions. The financial institutions that are given authority to protect customers under the subchapter are referred to as covered entities, which refers to subdivisions in this title that define banks, trust companies, savings institutions, and credit unions, as well as their subsidiaries and affiliates. Associated third parties are defined as any individual a customer has authorized to be contacted by the customer's covered entity, a family member of a customer whom a covered entity reasonably believes is closely associated with the customer, a co-owner, authorized signatory, or beneficiary on a customer's account, or an attorney, trustee, conservator, guardian, or any individual holding power of attorney. 10803, in brief, allows for financial institutions to take protective actions if they believe a customer is the victim of financial exploitation, which is defined under section 10.802.5. These protective actions include delaying or refusing transactions, withdrawals, and disbursements, as well as changes in ownership, beneficiary designations, or other authorizations that the financial institution suspects are the result of financial exploitation. Financial institutions are not required to take these actions, but may use its sole discretion based on the information available at the time. The authority comes with an expiration date detailed in subdivision C1. The hold can last up to 15 business days, but it can be canceled as soon as the covered entity is satisfied that the transaction will not result in financial exploitation. The hold is also lifted upon receipt of a court order directing the release of funds. Subdivision C2 allows for the financial institution to extend that 15 business days hold by another 15 days if the institution's financial exploitation concerns have not been mitigated. Again, this authority would be overruled by a court order ordering the release of the funds. And I do want to emphasize here that the language of the bill clearly states that these transactions are subject to these delays. Specific transactions, not all account activity. So customers that an institution believes are victims of financial exploitation will not have their entire account frozen. Day-to-day expenses, automated bill payments, standard activities continue unaffected by the protective action. Under subsection D, it is made clear that any protective action the institution chooses to take is in line with applicable state and federal laws governing banking and commerce. And 10.804 allows for a covered entity to contact an associated third party should the financial institution believe that the customer is a victim of financial exploitation. The legislation limits the financial institution to providing only that information which is necessary to discuss the specific transaction that is suspected to be fraudulent. Covered entities are also given protection if they choose not to disclose their concerns to a third party, if they suspect the third party may be involved in the financial exploitation. 10.805 provides covered entities immunity from civil, criminal, and administrative liability for any actions taken or not taken under this law. 10.806 is a rule of statutory construction and specifies that the provisions of this new subchapter are to be construed liberally to encourage covered entities to take reasonable protective actions to prevent the financial exploitation of their customers. Sections 5 and 6, we're getting close to the end, are the reporting sections, and these are important. We talked about them quite a bit in committee. Section 5 calls for the Commissioner of Financial Regulation to work with industry representatives to provide data on the number and dollar amount of suspicious transactions. We want to know what's happening, and we want to get educated on what's out there. The report is due by January 15th of 2027 and annually thereafter. Section 6 calls for the Commissioner of Financial Regulation to work with industry representatives and service providers to assess the utilization of the provisions of this bill related to coerced debt, and that's due November 15th, 2029. Section 7 details the effective dates of the sections of the bill, and the technical correction in Section 3 and the bank transaction hold sections, including the DFR report, take effect on passage. The coerced debt provisions in sections 1, 2, and 6 take effect July 1st of 28. And this timeline gives lending institutions, service providers, and state agencies time to conduct outreach, update systems, and prepare for implementation. This bill, it is comprehensive, clear, and accessible. It gives us protections that can promote safety for victims and the integrity of our financial institution. A lot of parties came together to make this work. The committee heard from a broad range of stakeholders. We heard from the president of the Association of Vermont Credit Unions. We heard from the president of the Vermont Bankers Association. We heard from the VRP project director at Vermont Legal Aid. We heard from a staff attorney at Vermont Legal Aid. We heard from the Department of Financial Regulation, the Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. We heard from AARP, from Legislative Council, and our vote in committee was 7-0-0, Mr. President. I also believe this bill was in judiciary, so the chair of judiciary might want to speak to it as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question, Senator from Wyndham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll keep this brief. Yes, H 385 started off in Senate Judiciary, and we're appreciative that Senate Finance was willing to take possession after we had our initial walkthrough. During that walkthrough, we realized that essentially just pages 13 through 17 were in our jurisdiction. Those were the sections, as we heard, that established court procedures, the evidence threshold, and who has to meet that threshold to prove their case. And after reviewing the relevant sections, Senate Judiciary was supportive of the language as written. We had no further recommendations, and by a straw poll, the committee was supportive of the bill, and we asked for the Senate support.
Question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of H 385. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, I will move that pending announcements, the Senate stand in adjournment until 11 a.m. Thursday, May 7th, 2026.
Are there any announcements? Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Finance started 10 minutes ago, so I would ask the committee to get your pizza and ice cream and come to committee as quickly as possible.
Senator from Washington.
Thank you. Senate appropriations will not be meeting this afternoon, but the Senate conferees on the budget should go to the Senate Appropriations Committee at the fall of the gathering.
Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Government operations will meet at 1:45.
Senator from Wyndham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate institutions will meet at 2.
Senator from Bennington.
Mr. President, the Education Committee will meet at 1:40.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate stand in adjournment until 11 a.m. Thursday, May 7th, 2026. Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we'll stand in adjournment until 11 a.m. Thursday, May 7th of 2026.